So, you've heard a little bit about the history of nootropics, why you might want to use them, what type of effects they can have on you. But before you use anything, you should really understand how it works. With nootropics, you should really understand what effect they're having on your brain. So, what we're going to discuss here is how the more commonly used nootropics work. One thing to keep in mind is that while some nootropics start having a noticeable effect within 20 to 30 minutes, others might take a few hours to take effect. And a few others, like say cordyceps mushrooms, can take up to a whole month of daily usage to really start getting the full effects of them. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about are the effect that nootropics have on neurotransmitters. These are only 5 of our neurotransmitters, but they're 5 of the most commonly affected ones, so they're the only ones we're going to talk about in this. Neurotransmitters are the chemicals in our brains that allow our neurons or brain cells to communicate, which enable us to perform tasks, feel emotions, and even learn new stuff. Different neurotransmitters are associated with different functions in the brain, and an excess of one of these can reduce the levels of others. That's why a lot of different people choose to stack nootropics together so they can offset some of that depletion. Nootropics can affect our neurotransmitters in a few different ways. The first is simply by increasing the amount of neurotransmitters produced by your brain. The next way is kind of just the opposite. It reduces the amount of neurotransmitters in your brain. The third way is that it blocks the reuptake of the neurotransmitters so that more of them stay available to be used by your brain. The first one we're going to talk about is acetylcholine. Now, acetylcholine is associated with mental processing speed, creativity, learning, memory, focus, and decision making. You can get acetylcholine naturally from things like eggs, organ meat, fish, or whey protein. While it's possible to get enough acetylcholine from your diet, most people don't. And the thing with acetylcholine is some nootropics deplete the amount or use it up. So whenever I stack a nootropic, I always include some type of choline source. Some of the common nootropics that boost acetylcholine are things like alpha GPC, citicoline, choline bitterate, centrofexanine, things like that. A lot of times, especially with the racetam family, you always want to take some type of choline source with them because it will help to increase their effects, and also it'll reduce the chance of developing what is known as a racetam headache. The next one we're going to talk about is GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. Now, GABA isn't always associated with neurotransmitters because it is a amino acid, but it can act as a neurotransmitter in your brain. GABA is associated with things like memory, social interactions, anxiety, and relaxation and sleep. Some of the foods that can help create more GABA in your brain are things like cherry tomatoes, fermented yogurt, germinated brown rice, kimchi, and shrimp. Another great way to increase your levels of GABA naturally is through drinking green teas, black teas, or oolong tea. A lot of those teas have L-theanine, so that helps to increase the levels of GABA in your brain. You can buy GABA as a supplement. Most places sell it, most health food stores, online, Amazon, any of those places. But it's not clear how effective this by itself is. One of the best known sources for GABA in a supplement form is something called Phenibut. Other things can stimulate GABA, things like cannabis and even more serious things like alcohol or some prescription drugs. But we'd like to try to keep away from that. So I'd stick with a source of L-theanine like green tea, or if you really want to try it out, you can try out Phenibut. I think Thaddeus is going to have a video about Phenibut here shortly, so you'll be able to get deeper into that. The next one we want to talk about is glutamate. Glutamate is responsible for memory, learning, energy levels in your brain and also in your body, creativity, and just overall health of your brain. This neurotransmitter isn't as commonly affected by nootropics as a lot of the others, but it can still be influenced by some of the members of the racetam family, especially aniracetam and Noopept. Next one we're going to talk about is dopamine. Dopamine is involved with the flow of information to the front of your brain, which is associated with thought and emotion. It's usually involved with memory recall, various emotions you have, and also the pleasure you feel. It's sometimes called the reward neurotransmitter because whenever you, like, say you eat something sweet or you do something that you really love, you're getting that dopamine dump in your brain, which is giving you that effect. If you watched our Nootropics webinar, you heard me mention that many of the smart drugs that shouldn't be considered nootropics, like Adderall and Ritalin, are stimulants, and they really react with dopamine. Thankfully, though, there are some nootropics that can influence dopamine without the harmful side effects. Mucina is my go-to for increasing dopamine because of the high levels of L-dopa that it carries, which is a natural precursor to dopamine. Some of the other things are bacopenmanure, sulbutamine, Noopept, and L-tyrosine. All of these can have a positive effect on dopamine in our brains. The next one we're going to talk about is serotonin. Serotonin is a major influencer with your memory, your mood, your anxiety. It also can affect your appetite and your sleep. When we don't have enough serotonin in our brain, we can feel more anxiety, more fear, or even depression. Some foods that help with raising your serotonin levels are any sources that are high in tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid and a precursor to serotonin. You know, like at Thanksgiving dinner, you eat all that turkey and then you get really tired. Well, that's always been attributed to the tryptophan in the turkey. So, foods that are high in protein, like nuts, can help to raise your levels of serotonin naturally. Exercise is also a great way to raise these levels. As for supplementation, There are some natural tryptophan supplements available. You can also try things like BACAPA, 5-HTP, and Noopept. So that's it for the neurotransmitters. You can Google any of these and read tons more about them. There's tons of information out there. A couple other ones you might want to check out are the neurotransmitters epinephrine and norepinephrine. But next we're going to move on to blood flow and oxygen in the brain. Another crucial role that nootropics play on our cognitive performance is to increase the blood flow and oxygen flow in the brain. Blood and oxygen are super crucial to the operation of our brain. Of course, it's crucial to the operation of every part of our body, but especially our brains. Blood and oxygen are the primary sources of energy for our brains, which means that optimal levels lead us to be more alert, focused, and motivated. As the new blood comes into our brains, it brings with us the oxygen and also critical nutrients that our brain needs to function. And as it goes back out of our brain, it leaves with harmful toxins, chemicals, anything else that's building up in our brain. So it helps to keep the brain detoxified. Increased blood flow can also lead to a lower risk of stroke. Some good nootropics to boost the blood flow in your brain would be things like BACAPA, ginkgo biloba, and vinpocetine. These are all great things to increase that blood flow. The last thing we're going to talk about is really my favorite area of neuroscience. It's neurogenesis and brain plasticity. Were you ever told to stop doing something when you were younger, when you were a kid, by your parents because you were going to kill your brain cells, and once they were gone, you can never get them back? Well, there's some good news. That isn't actually true. It wasn't very widely accepted until the last few decades, but it's now called neurogenesis. That's the ability of our brain to grow new cells. Up until recently, it was thought that our brains quit creating new brain cells when we're still inside of our mothers, when we're still an embryo. But that's not true, and we're finding out more and more about the brain every day. You know, when you cut your skin, it repairs itself. Broken bones heal just as strong and sometimes even stronger. So why wouldn't your brain have the same type of repair mechanisms as the rest of the body? You know, this is one of the most cutting edge subjects in neuroscience and definitely one of my favorite. Neurogenesis is also a big part of an overall term called neuroplasticity, which refers to our brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections, which allow us to learn, remember, and connect with new experiences we have. You know, our brains are always changing and reorganizing information, and the more it's able to do this, the better our cognitive function becomes. My all-time favorite natural nootropic, the first nootropic I ever tried, is great to increase neuroplasticity. And it does this by increasing what's called nerve growth factor in the brain, which leads to neurogenesis, while also helping to protect the brain. This is the mushroom, lion's mane, which has been used for centuries to improve cognitive function and even help to repair the brain after physical damage, which was one of the reasons that I was turned on to lion's mane. Some other nootropics that can help increase neuroplasticity are things like huperzine A and Noopept. So I hope this has helped you to learn a little bit more about how nootropics actually affect the brain. And I hope you are enjoying this nootropic series, and I can't wait to explain more and delve really deep into nootropics with you guys. Thanks.